Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first podcast of the Holistic Holiday at Sea podcast. I'm Jessica Porter, and I'm so excited to be here today and honestly a little emotional to be doing this. The cruise has meant so much to me. And this podcast is about having real, heart centered conversations with some of the most inspiring people we have had the good luck to have on the cruise in the past, part of the Holistic Holiday at Sea family at this point. So today we are starting very strong with someone who has touched millions of lives with his work, his heart, his deep commitment to helping people and the planet heal through food. He is the co-founder of the Food Revolution Network, a best-selling author, a deeply compassionate guy, and a longtime friend of the Holistic Holiday at Sea. So Ocean Robbins, thank you so much for being here today with us. It's really great to have you.
Well, it is an honor to be with you for this inaugural podcast. Many great things to come.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it makes perfect sense that we would have you kick off the podcast. So I'm just going to launch into some questions, and here we go. We'll start right at the beginning, Ocean. What was the first thing that sort of lit the spark in you to connect food with something much bigger than what's just on our plates?
I was born in a one-room log cabin in the middle of the woods to parents who were practicing yoga and meditation for several hours a day, growing most of their own food in the garden, living on like $1,000 a year. We were truly back to the landers, and they named their kid Ocean. Uh, and by the way, they almost named me Kale, way before Kale was cool. So I grew up
Lucky Dodge.
where food and survival were connected in a very intimate and direct way, and where we always thought of food as something to which we wanted to bring as much consciousness as possible. So, my parents would sprout their grains and eat lots of sprouts. And if they made bread, it was from sprouted grains that they ground themselves on a hand grinder. Like everything was so basic. And so from my experience, food was not a commodity. It was a community. It was a web of relationships that, yes, nourishes us, but also that we have to participate in if we're going to survive. So, nowadays when we can just go to the store and buy whatever in a plastic package from anywhere in the world, and we complain if it costs an extra 50 cents. We don't have any sense of relationship in that situation to what it's like to actually toil in the field, what it's like to actually know that if it rains, you're going to be able to have a harvest. So for me, I've always had that deep sense of respect and gratitude for food as the source of life. And then as I got a bit older, I learned that not everybody was growing their food with organic gardens and compost piles, that a lot of our food is coming from industrialized systems that are depleting the soil, depleting the water, destroying our environment, and torturing animals. And so as I learned about all of that, it was like just in my nature to say, no, we humans need to live in right relation with the earth. We're not just here to destroy the planet. We are here to co-create the most beautiful world that we can.
Wow. You are what I used to call a freaky higher being, which is like second generation hippie. The kid who who grows up in that like perfect, almost Eden of naturalness.
You were going to say a freaky weirdo or something.
No, no.
I'll say this, I think that in a society where it's normal to eat foods and live in ways that lead us to diabetes and heart disease and dementia and that destroy the planet, I think it's okay to be a little weird sometimes.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. And when I got into this in my 20s, I came from that industrialized processed food. And so when I awakened to the natural side,
Yeah.
people like yourself who had been, pardon the pun, sort of baked in from day one, I was fascinated by it and still am. And I think it's a beautiful thing because it lives through you and you can really feel it. Um, okay, so there's lots of people in our community who say they want to feel better, they want to eat better, but sometimes it feels overwhelming to them. Is there something you say to people who are standing at the at the beginning of this journey?
Yeah, don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. What I'm interested in is how we can cultivate healthy habits, not how we can take on a fad diet and then crash and go back. Like, it is what you do day in and day out that shapes your destiny. And the best time to repair a roof is when the sun is shining, not when it's pouring rain. So if you're trying to change habits, you want to use your mental energy and your willpower on the days when you have some. So on the weekend or when you got a little time, that's when you read a good book that will inspire you. That's when you find the recipes that you can make and use. That's when you shop in quantity and plan ahead and batch cook so that you can set yourself up so that when you're stressed and exhausted, you've got something healthy to turn to. We live in a toxic food culture all around us. Junk food is advertised, it's mainstreamized, it's normalized, and it's subsidized. Twinkies has 14 subsidized ingredients in it. Broccoli's got none. The taxpayers are subsidizing junk food. And what we need to do in that context is to reclaim our health and our lives by changing what we eat. And doing so can be like fighting a bit of an uphill battle. So what you need to do is you need to work smart. And that means healthy habits. That means social support. That means planning ahead. That means setting yourself up for success even when you're tired and stressed and exhausted. And so when we can do that, we create a backdrop of support that makes it easier and easier to do the right thing. And you really can learn to love foods that love you back. But I'm not going to lie, donuts taste better to most people than Kale does, right? It's just a fact, right? The soda, apparently, I've never had it, but apparently bacon does too, right? So I think that at the end of the day, we've got to learn to not be a prisoner of our taste buds. Like, I want to cultivate an enjoyment of things that are good for me, but I don't want to be ruled by cravings for things that are not good for me. There is more pleasure and more joy in a mind that is clear, in a cardiovascular system that works, in blood sugar that is balanced, and in knowing that your life is an expression of your values than could be ever found at the bottom end of a bag of potato chips or cookies.
Well said. I just want to say, as someone who has, gone from the junk eating, better healthy eating, and then, later in my adult, I'd gone through the vicissitudes of a little bit of back and forth, that there was a certain point where I realized you have to start to listen to how something makes you feel and
Mm-hmm.
not just how it tastes. And that's a discernment and a sensitivity that develops over time. And even now, when I haven't eaten enough kale for a while, or, I've just been going to restaurants and having noodles, and, and I'll come back to the foods that my body has been trained on, not just habitually, but biologically. And it takes one serving, and my whole body is like, thank you. I know this. I
Yeah.
love this. And yes, it may not taste as good as the noodles, but nothing tastes as good as healthy feels.
Yeah, so true. And literally, your taste buds change in a
Yes.
couple of ways. One is that your saliva will secrete enzymes. There are enzymes in your saliva that are different as your body adjusts to things. So the first time somebody eats kale, it'll taste bitter to them. By somewhere between 5, 10, or 15 times, their body actually secretes enzymes that make it taste sweeter and less bitter. It's a proven fact. And then there's the fact that your microbiome changes, and when you feed the good guys, they want more of the good stuff. And when you feed the bad guys, they want more of the bad stuff. So literally, when you feel cravings in your stomach, it could be the microbes down there that are saying, give me more sugar or give me more kale,
Right.
and literally that can change what you crave and what you want. And then it's also true that, um, to some extent, junk foods are a bit like drugs in that they can actually create feel-good sensations short-term, dopamine hits in the brain, for example. And so when you talk about eating for how you feel, there's different kinds of feel, right? There's like a short-term pleasure sensation that we often get from so-called comfort foods, right? And then there's a deeper sense of equanimity, peace, and well-being that comes from nourishing foods that truly give your body the nutrients it needs to thrive. And that process of learning to listen is kind of how we reconnect with a piece of our humanity that in some ways, I think, in the modern world has been a bit stolen from us, hijacked, if you will, by junk food, by advertisements, by consumerist culture, by so many things that are happening in our world today that take us further from who we really are as compassionate, kind, generous, generative, resourceful, creative, and loving creatures. And so I think reclaiming our relationship to ourselves, our values, our nature, and our ability to listen and understand what our body really craves and really needs, like that is powerful, soulful, and transformative work.
Amen. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Um, so I want to go back to your work for a moment around the idea of revolution. The word revolution is a very powerful word, and your work has brought together people from all around the world, but at the same time, your work feels really personal. So how do you keep the heart present in something called a revolution?
Well, I think that we need change on three levels. There's internal, there's interpersonal, and there's systemic. So internal is, of course, our own relationship to self, health, body, awareness. What do I need? What's good for me? What truly nourishes me? What makes my heart sing? What makes my body come alive? What helps me sleep well, feel well, live well, right? And then there's interpersonal, which is the social side of food. How do we create healthy food culture? Webs of relationships that nurture our souls and our values. You know, throughout history, breaking bread together, sharing meals together has been a source of communion and connection between people. So how can we create a healthy food culture and recognize that as we choose to make healthy and conscious food choices, we're actually shifting culture in a way that makes it easier for everyone we love to do the same. We're setting a positive example. We're being a leader, if you will, by following our own conscience, our own values, and our own well-being, even in a culture that may not always do so, right? And then the third piece is systemic, which is our food choices are impacted by the world and they impact the world. So when pesticides are sprayed in a field in Thailand, like if you eat that rice from that field, you may be exposed to those pesticides. If those pesticides include DDT, well, that's going to get in your body and may increase your risk of a future generation downstream from you having a birth defect, right? So these things are all connected. If you're eating the products of a factory farmed animal, then you may also be getting exposed to pathogenic bacteria that are resistant of antibiotics, which could show up as food poisoning or some other disease later in life. Or you may also be eating an animal that was raised to be morbidly obese, and now all of that fat is getting into your body, and it may increase your risk of obesity or cardiovascular disease. So what we're seeing is that what's done out there affects us, right? But also what we do affects the world. Our food choices have a profound impact on the planet. And this is something that I think is just stunning. So of the weight of mammal bodies on Earth, the collective mammalian biomass, where we're at right now, humans are 34%, about a third of all mammal body weight on planet Earth. Our livestock are 62%, and all the wild creatures of the earth are 4%. So what we're doing is we're eating all the animals, all the wild animals out of house and home, destroying their ecosystems, whether it's tropical rainforests or native savannas or grasslands or what have you. We're destroying all that so that we can create land on which to graze livestock or grow food to feed to livestock. And then that livestock is in turn giving us heart attacks. But the thing is that when we eat lower on the food chain, we free up resources, land, water, ecosystems, which can in turn become hotbeds for biodiversity, which can leave water in our aquifers instead of pumped out, creating a future of desertification. We can create a more beautiful world where there's more wild animals, there's more land, there's more carbon in the soil and less carbon in the atmosphere, where there's a more beautiful future for our kids and grandkids. So when you choose to eat lower on the food chain, when you choose to eat more wholesome, healthy, plant-based foods, you can do good for yourself, you can do good for everyone you love, and you can do good for our planet, all in one bite. And to me, that is powerful. And I just love that it's all connected. You know, sometimes in life, so often we've got to make trade-offs. It's like you've only got so many hours in the day. Where are you going to put your time? If you put your time with your grandkids, you're not going to have it to work or to sleep, right? You got to make these tough choices. But when it comes to food, You can make choices that align with your conscience, that help you be healthy, and that contribute to a healthy food culture all at the same freaking time. And I think that's pretty awesome.
I think you're awesome, Ocean. You have to move to California. Come hang out with me. Um, so we may have covered this slightly, but what role does community play in this? Can you offer us some practical ideas around connecting with other people who want to do the same thing?
A lot of people are worried that if they eat healthy food, they're going to be lonely. And I get it. I've been at family gatherings where I'm the only person eating the way I am. And I feel like annoying to just be like, hey, people, I can't eat anything here. Can we find something for me? Or I bring my own food. It just doesn't, it feels lonely a little bit, right? And people are nice and respectful, but it still doesn't feel great, right? And social circles where it's like, I've got to like be that oddball who makes those special requests, or else I just don't remember to say anything. And then what do? Just scrounge, it's not, that can be not so fun. But here's the thing, folks. First of all, when you plan ahead and you do make those requests, it's how culture changes. I have some friends who are just opening a restaurant, and they opened the restaurant and they were serving a menu that was pretty much a lot of animal products. And then they said that they were getting feedback from their customers that about a third of their customers were actually complaining that they didn't have more vegetarian options on the menu. So guess what? The menu's changing, right? Like they're literally redoing the menu, printing new ones with lots of vegetarian options because the market spoke. Well, how did the market speak? With people who are willing to risk being annoying, right? Because they wanted to take care of themselves. So what I want to say is that every time you care for yourself, you don't have to do it in an annoying way. There's that joke like, how do you know if someone's vegetarian? Oh, don't worry, they'll tell you, because like vegetarians can be a little, some vegetarians have a bit of a reputation for being cranky or sort of, I'm better than you, right? And so it's interesting. How do you like live your values, live your conscience, take care of yourself in a way that is profoundly respectful to other human beings, while at the same time is profoundly respectful to who you are and what you value? Now, one of the things I value is respecting other human beings. So I try to bring that into the equation. Martin Luther King said, you've got no moral authority but those who can feel your underlying contempt. So when you're judging or pathologizing people or blaming them or feeling, more vegan than thou, like I think you create an actual disrespect in the ecosystem of relatedness, which in my view is a form of violence. So I am interested in how I can truly respect sovereignty. No one likes to have an ideology shoved down their throat, but at the same time, respect my sovereignty, right? That I get to be who I am, which includes that I am excited to share about why I eat the way I do when people want to hear about it. I do not want to force their view. Do you want to know why I'm eating this way? No. But if somebody asks, it's funny how often people will say, are you vegetarian for animals or the environment or your health? I'm like, do I have to pick just one? Like it's kind of all in there, right? So people get a decent idea, and a lot of people think they should be vegetarian or should be more vegetarian, or they feel a little bad. They know that meat isn't great for the planet, but that's not where they're at. And whether it's something they've wrestled with and made a conscious choice around, or something they feel stuck in, or whatever, that's their process. I just love them. I respect them. I honor their journey, and I want them to honor mine. So it's a live and let live kind of a goal that I have with people who eat differently than me, with love, care, respect, and also integrity. That's my goal. Now, that said, there are times when you need a support system. You need other people who eat the way you do to help you, right? There's a simple reality that if you're the only one who does anything in your life, in your whole world, you're probably going to have a hard time sticking with it, And we all do better when we have mentors, examples, inspirations, allies, feedback loops to support us on the journey. So that could mean, hosting a potluck with other whole foods, plant-based eaters. That could mean recipe swaps. That could mean, reaching out even online in communities. At Food Revolution Network, we have a whole life club membership community where people come together and share stories and struggles and journeys, and get to go to live cooking demos and have community connections and what we call tea parties, where people can just connect and share about the journey. And that's one option. It's online and it's a beautiful space. Of course, on a cruise, you get an incredible opportunity to connect with kindred spirits. But hopefully that doesn't end there. Hopefully, if you meet somebody awesome, you get their number. You stay in touch. Say, hey, can I reach out? Share recipes, build connections. We all need a sense of belonging. We're very social creatures. And so set yourself up so that your sense of belonging becomes an ally to your plant-based journey, not a problem.
Again, beautifully said. You know, and along this line, I have neighbors who I've been traveling a lot lately, so I haven't been hanging out with my neighbors much. But one of them, a couple, has a 7-year-old daughter, and they've come over here a couple times over the last few years. And every time they come, I make a vegan lasagna. And she's been asking for Jessica's vegan lasagna for like a year, and we finally did it this Saturday. And I just realized, like, this one food
Yeah.
has brought 6 people together. You know what I mean? And the evening itself was just so beautiful and loving, and they're not vegetarian all the time, but the kid remembers the vegan lasagna. And it was magical in that respect, that, you know, I wouldn't have I had resistance to just inviting people over, but once the memory of the food through this kid actually did it. And it's kind of what you're saying in a way. Like, it's all connected, and you keep the system going, and you keep both the people and the food moving, and the system supports itself over time.
Yeah.
You, Ocean, have met so many people in your life, I'm sure, who have been embarking on this and continuing with this journey. Is there any one story that really stands out to you that you want to share with us today that's sort of a example of what's possible?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I think the story I want to tell, it might be a bit of a surprise to you, but it's a chicken farmer by the name of Craig Watts. Over 20 years in North Carolina, he'd been running a factory farm chicken operation. He was in the Purdue system, so they provided the equipment and the manuals and the structure and the contracts and the baby birds, and then he'd provide the fat birds, and then they'd buy them and get some money. And he had taken out loans when he started his operation, and 20 years later, he was still paying them off on land that his family had had for generations in North Carolina. He had about 30,000 birds in his warehouse. And Craig did not love the life he was living, but he didn't have a lot of education, didn't have a lot of other options. But then one day he was watching television, and an ad comes on from Jim Purdue saying, at Purdue Farms, we treat our chickens well, and they're happy and they're healthy. And Craig said that moment something snapped for him, because he said, I'm not a vet, but I'm pretty sure my chickens are not healthy. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm pretty sure they're not happy either. And so what he ended up doing was he invited Compassion in World Farming to come, cameras rolling, to film his award-winning chicken operation. And we're not talking here about an undercover operation where an animal rights activist takes footage to show the worst apples in a bad situation. We're talking about an award-winning chicken farmer who was inspected by Purdue every week, opening the doors of his farm to cameras and showing what's inside. And what the world found when that footage was released was shocking. We're talking about a situation where the birds were bred to be so morbidly obese, it was the equivalent to a human infant who, by the time they're 3 months old, weighs about 600 pounds. They could not walk for the most part by the time they got towards full size of when they were going to be killed. And they were lying in feces, not only their own feces, but the feces of generations of birds before them. The barn was cleaned about every 2 years. And so it's concrete. There's fecal material everywhere. Birds lying in the feces. They develop sores. 5% of the birds were dead before it was time to harvest the living ones and kill them all. 5% were already lying there. So you've got birds with sores lying in feces. You've got dead birds littering around the warehouse. He was forbidden by contract from ever opening a window or a door, because fresh air could stimulate their activity and reduce the feed conversion ratio. They had no natural light, and this was life for these birds. So he showed the footage, and it kind of went viral. There's this chicken farmer who's telling us what's up, right? And people all over the world started talking about it, and Purdue was not pleased, as you might imagine. And they ended up doing a whole investigation trying to make his life miserable. Within a year or two after that, Craig Watts got out of the chicken farming business. Today, his farm is growing medicinal mushrooms. He has discovered that chicken barns are great environments for medicinal mushrooms because you've got the lights, you've got the enclosure, and you can grow a lot in that amount of space. So he's now also a consultant helping factory farmers to transition to more compassionate entrepreneurial life paths. And I got to speak to Craig a few years back, and he is salt of the earth, kind of bitter about what he's seen, but has a heart of gold. Can you imagine what kind of courage it takes for a man like that to risk his livelihood and his financial future to tell the truth because his conscience demanded it, and then to give up the only real career he'd ever known and start something new at a time when he'd almost paid off his debts after 20 years? But he had had enough. He could not participate in cruelty. And he made a different choice. And now he's inspiring other people to make different choices. And he's growing mushrooms. So Craig Watts is one of my heroes.
I love that. That's fantastic. And we all need courage in a lot of ways. And it's even courageous to start changing what you eat. There's a courage in that because we change. And when we change, we don't know who we're going to be next. And it requires courage to face the next version of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. At Holistic Holiday at Sea on the cruise, we often say that food is more than fuel. It's nourishment for the body and for the soul.
Yeah.
So how do you connect food? Well, you've sort of answered this question. I just want to know if you have any other versions of it. But how do you connect food with joy, love, or even purpose?
My grandpa, as you know, founded an ice cream company called Baskin-Robbins, and my dad, John, rather famously walked away from the ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. He was invited to join in running the family business in his early 20s, and he said no. At the time, my grandpa's brother-in-law and business partner, Bert Baskin, was dying of heart disease. He ended up passing at the age of 54. And my dad said, I don't want to spend my life selling a product that's going to contribute to more people like my Uncle Bert dying too soon. And that's going to contribute to, cows being mistreated. And so he ended up walking away from any access to the family wealth and moving to that little island off the coast of Canada where I was born. He moved along with my mom. But along the way, we've really seen this interesting contrast because, Baskin-Robbins' most popular advertising slogan for many years was "We make people happy." It was kind of iconic in the advertising world. And, my grandpa loved to put smiles on children's faces. He didn't know ice cream was going to kill anybody. He just wanted to make people smile and make people happy. And he felt like he could do that and sell ice cream. But the truth is that in the long run, while an ice cream cone is not going to kill anybody and could be momentarily pleasurable, in the long run, it's going to contribute to more suffering, disease, and death, right? The more ice cream you eat, the more likely you are to get a heart attack, to end up with cancer, to get type 2 diabetes, to have dementia, and to carry excess weight. Just statistically, because there's sugar and saturated fat, and those are not probably health foods for most people. So then this sort of set off this inquiry in my dad's life and in mine. Well, where does happiness come from? Because short-term pleasure is not the same as true, deep, profound joy, right? And true, deep, profound joy, I think, comes most of all from relatedness. I mean, the research is telling us that when we feel a sense of love and belonging, that's associated with more happiness in life, number one. And then health, of course, number two. There's a saying that if a person with their health has 1,000 dreams, the person with that has only got one dream, which is to get it back. So my interest is in helping people to have 1,000 dreams and to have loving connections and to have a body that can truly nourish their spirits. And I think we do that best by eating foods that make us well, that truly support us in thriving. And, I think an interesting lens to this is the kind of spiritual well-being that to me comes most of all from having the conditions to have a clear mind and upwelling of joy and connection, but also integrity. When you feel like your life is aligned with your values, there is a kind of congruency in that feels good. It feels good to know that you're on the right side of history. It feels good to know that with all of the problems and violence in the world right now, that we can be part of something different, something a little more beautiful, a little more sacred, and a little more loving. And, when you choose to eat lower on the food chain, when you choose to eat food that's grown without toxic pesticides, when you choose to eat food that is grown humanely and where the farm workers are treated with respect through fair trade, when you support local food, all of these things feel good. Like it is just a really positive feeling to know that my life is my message, to quote Mahatma Gandhi. And your food life can be your message. And when you do that, and you're also taking care of yourself, there is something so satisfying and so beautiful about that. Now, it's a journey, right? You're not going to get there instantly, but every bite you take, every step you take can be an opportunity to move on that journey. And it's worth it.
Ocean, thank you so much for leaving us on the idea and the experience of feeling good. I'm a firm believer that we do things that make us feel good, and we need to start attaching good feelings to these good choices, and that they, as we talked about earlier, like have a momentum biologically, and that good feeling gets stronger and it starts to issue out not only from our bodies, but into our lives. And we actually see our lives transform based on what we're putting in the vessel in the middle of the life. And I'm really, really grateful to you and to your work and to leaving us on that note and that powerful, powerful message of integrity and alignment. And also what you said earlier about imperfection and respect for people's journeys. There's no right or wrong here. There's our discovery of our own um, life and life force and what supports us. And supports the planet. So thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Jessica, thank you. And to everybody watching or listening, thank you for being here and being a part of this podcast, episode number 1.
That's right.
Back.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, because this conversation is connected to the Holistic Holiday at Sea cruise. And this is our 20th year. We're doing our first cruise to Alaska in late August into September, and that's going to be a historic thing for us. I'm really grateful to be a part of it. I know you'll be there, Ocean, on the ocean, correct?
I won't be in Alaska.
Oh, you won't be in Alaska. Oh my God.
Oh, I've
edit that out.
In for the next one.
Okay, great. But we also go to the Caribbean in the spring, and it's always good to see you on the cruises. So we will be sailing this fall with an incredible group of speakers. Life-changing workshops will be happening, daily yoga, daily meditation. It's more than just a vacation. It's a really enriching, nourishing, lovely experience, because we also serve the most amazing plant-based cuisine.
Yes.
And surrounded by Alaska, the breathtaking beauty of Alaska. So you can find more about this cruise coming up at Holistic Holiday at Sea. Again, thank you, Ocean, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, take good care of yourself and stay connected to what really matters.